Alrighty. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Optimizing Remote Engagement with Microsoft Teams Voice and Video, hosted by Sirius and our partner, Microsoft. My name is Taylor Dibbin, Marketing Campaign Specialist at Sirius, and I will be your moderator for today's webcast. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. To eliminate background noise, all attendees will be muted throughout the webinar so everyone can hear our speakers clearly. This is a live presentation and will be recorded. A link to the recording of this presentation along with a copy of the slide deck covered will be made available to you shortly after the conclusion of this webcast. If you have any questions during the presentation, a Q&A chat engagement tool is available to you for your use. We have experts on awaiting your questions, so we encourage you to submit any questions you may have. And lastly, there's a survey that will be made available at the conclusion of this webcast, so we would greatly appreciate your feedback on this presentation and what you would like to learn more about in the future. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's experts. You will first be hearing from Michael Siebert, Senior Director of Digital Solutions at Sirius. Michael has worked in the industry for over 30 years with progressive experience, including application development, business analysis, and project and program management. With this diverse background, providing the basis for a keen understanding of business process and technology, along with how to effectively manage complex teams, Michael is a portfolio director currently responsible for optimizing the modern work practice across Sirius and MessageOps. Following Michael, you will be hearing from Kevin Vogel, Senior Solutions Architect for MessageOps, a division of Sirius. Kevin has been in the technology industry for over 40 years, with focus today on the modern workplace within Microsoft Cloud, from Exchange to SharePoint, through focusing now primarily on Teams. Kevin has trained many corporations on how to manage and govern teams and held in-person and virtual training for over 100,000 users on the basics and advanced uses for Teams. Kevin helps set the vision and roadmap for our customers to optimize their use of the modern work platform. And finally, I would like to introduce you all to Michael Dempsey, Technical Architect for Infrastructure Solutions at Sirius. Michael is a more than 25-year technology professional with a progressive career in engineering, consulting, IT management, and business management. As the lead technology strategist for the National Collaboration Practice, he coordinates the efforts of sales, consulting, and delivery resources involved in the design, implementation, and support of voice and video and meeting solutions. So with that, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend today's webinar, and I will now turn the presentation over to Michael.
You're talking to mute, Michael.
I did. Thanks very much. And Michael, yeah, thanks for the important safety tip. Make sure you're off of mute when doing your webinar. So yeah, I'll go ahead and say thanks again, Taylor, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And Michael and Kevin, thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to doing this with you, gents, and albeit in a virtual format. Got a lot to get through, but I'm going to give a quick run through the agenda here. First, I'm going to be providing a quick intro to Sirius and MessageOps. Right, we got some legacy MessageOps folks on here, maybe some legacy Sirius folks. And as you notice, Kevin from the MessageOps team, Michael Dempsey, myself from the quote-unquote legacy Sirius team. So, who are these two? What's the relationship? Why are we here together? So I'll give some clarification to that. Then I'm going to give a quick overview of our view of remote work, right, relative to how we got here, which we pretty much know, right, but more importantly, where we're going and how we can optimize that. At that point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, right, and Kevin's going to take us through the fundamentals of Microsoft Teams, right, and that's a capability within the Microsoft modern workplace that, we believe is really the leading platform for supporting remote work. Michael Dempsey is I'm going to take it from there. And he's going to give some perspective and detail on the voice and video capabilities that that platform has, and more importantly, that Sirius can bring to the table as it applies to Microsoft Teams. All right, and then I'm going to return to close it out with a call to action. Next slide. So, oh, I think you went to, that's fine. We'll go there. You can go ahead. I already kind of hit this. So, all right, so many on this call, as I said, right, are clients of Sirius, while some are, legacy clients of MessageOps, since we're all kind of collectively Sirius clients today. But some may be new to one of the other families. So, regardless of where you're coming from as an organization, right, all of us are facing numerous challenges in business today, right? The top three that you see there, change, disruption, disasters, seem pretty topical for where we are, right? Clearly, we've all been met with extreme change in terms of how we operate, disrupted by what many would call a disaster known as COVID, right? We were already facing, these and other challenges, and a movement that all of us as organizations were facing in this movement to cloud, and in fact, digital transformation overall, that really began years ago, was tremendously accelerated in just a matter of months at the beginning of 2020, right? More on that in just a moment when we give the point of view on remote work. But overall, with this increased demand from our customers on holistic cloud solutions, whether it be GCP, Amazon, or Microsoft in particular began to take on much more prominence with us. Next slide, Taylor. So, and as you can see on this slide here, right, we already had an existing relationship with Microsoft, right? Whether it be out of our cloud team, our infrastructure team, our digital team, our data team. We've been building out capabilities across the company, but we realized that we too needed to accelerate, right? Microsoft as an organization has so much to offer clients, right? But there are a lot of nuances to understand how to really optimize and maximize the value that Microsoft has for our customers, and how to do that in a cost-effective way, right? So how could we do that? Next slide. Well, as most on this call are aware, right, Sirius has a long history of sustained growth, both through organic growth, though largely through acquisition, right, as we're bringing additional capabilities to help serve the needs of our clients. MessageOps, which was the Microsoft Cloud division of Champion, was the latest and frankly the most strategic from a Microsoft Cloud perspective that we've done. They bring a tremendous wealth of resources and experience to our team. You combine that with the slide I showed before with some of the unique skills that Sirius has, in particular relevant to this webinar in the networking, voice, and infrastructure space, we're able to speak to you about some solutions that we really couldn't before. And Microsoft Teams, as it's used to support remote work with voice and video and security, is an area that we are in a much better position to do today because of people like Kevin Vogel from MessageOps, who've been leading that on their side for quite a while. And again, combined with Sirius, much better together as a single organization. So that's kind of the background and context. Next slide, Taylor. As to why MessageOps and why Sirius and MessageOps, together are better. So let's move forward and then talk about this concept of remote work and how did we get here? Well, how we got here really, it's an interesting lens to look back through, right? Because it provides a framework for understanding how remote work came about. More importantly, though, how it's evolved and where we're going to go, right? You look at this slide here, right? There used to be, you look back 100 years ago, a couple hundred years ago, right? There used to be a world before commuting, right? In the old days, most everyone, worked outside in the fields, right? We were an agrarian society. Most labor was done in the countryside. There was no commute to an office to be in question because there were no offices, right? How we looked at work in or outside the home and that idea of a commute in general, that really didn't take place until the Industrial Revolution, 1700s, 1800s, right? As that took place, then the demands on the workforce started to change. The need for labor in urban areas exploded, right? Population started to move in closer to where the work was being done, moving into the cities looking for jobs. But urban planning couldn't keep up with it, right? So living standards in the cities began to fall. Poor housing areas were so full that the working families who had moved into the cities to find work said, heck with this, we're moving out of the cities. The birth of suburbia, the early advent of commutes. Those commutes began and we started to have this clear separation between work and home. It's not the intent of this presentation here, but we do have some articles some other thought leadership on remote work in general, and we can get into more of that at another time. So you fast forward now quite a bit, right? The employee landscape has changed, right? Especially over the last few years, and not just with some people already moving to a flexible work environment and working from home, but the dynamics of how people were working in the office and working together changed as well. Collaboration, key leading term, right? A movement towards transparency and inclusivity in terms of how decisions were being made. Organizational structures are more flat today, right? People today were on twice as many teams, no pun intended, as they were just 5 years ago, right? And those teams were dynamic. Now keep in mind, right, this is all when people are primarily sitting in the office. It's rare that people wouldn't change on a multi-month project. And what's the first thing that would happen when somebody came on to a new project team, right? They'd go back to somebody's email and look through all the files and information needed to get that person up to speed, right? Finding out the way to optimize their collaboration. And in fact, studies showing, right, 80% of a worker's time is spent collaborating, whether that be in, meetings, calls, etc. Hence, the importance of this topic. And also, not to be understated, for the first time, there are 5 generations working together in the workplace. And all those 5 generations, various backgrounds and technology, different expectations about how to communicate and collaborate effectively. Some comfortable chatting on a phone, some might prefer email, some might prefer face-to-face, some might prefer just chat sessions, right? People are comfortable communicating and collaborating in different ways. But we had the workforce relatively engaged, right? We're in the office, we kind of had it figured out until this little bugger came along, right? All of a sudden, organizations were just thrust into this remote work situation. Employees literally grabbed their laptops, shut the lids, ran out the door. They weren't sure of what the future was going to bring. They weren't sure when they were going to come back. Organizations were also like, oh my gosh, how are we going to support this? We don't know, which end is up or where this is going to go. Didn't know how they were going to support their team members. Stay-at-home orders start to sweep the country, customer meetings canceled, conferences off the books, internal travel, forget about it. Offices began to close, and the change was forced upon us. Here we were. Next slide. So we looked at this, and when this happened, right, we noticed that our clients were in various states of how they could respond to this requirement for remote work. We noticed that some customers were pretty far along in their level of sophistication and in terms of how to support that need, while some had literally no idea how to take care of it. So we developed this concept that we call the remote work maturity curve, right? It's a way just to frame the conversation with our customers and how you can progress along the continuum. And that's really the important point, right? Remote work is not an either or kind of state, right? It is a progression along a continuum, that you move through, to help advance kind of how you're collaborating, how your teams are being supported, what their comfort level is, and frankly, how your productivity is responding, right? Now that we're well over a year into this, right, a lot of studies have shown that, in fact, with remote work, productivity actually increased. So it's not likely that we're all going to head back to the office en masse, right? How we are operating and collaborating together has fundamentally changed. So what platforms should we look at to support that? And more importantly, how do we need to optimize the use of those platforms, right? We look at Microsoft Teams as a way to do that, right? You're advancing. There you go. We look at Microsoft Teams. You can go ahead to the next slide. As a way to do that, right? Because Teams has so many capabilities inherently as part of to support the way individuals work and collaborate together, right? And voice and video is just a part of that. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Kevin from MessageOps, again, who is part of that organization. He's been leading the strategy and roadmap for how to help our customers to optimize that. Been a delight to work with Kevin so far since the MessageOps acquisition. So Kevin, take it away from here and let's learn a lot more about Teams.
Yeah, that's so far, Michael. Things are always rosy at the beginning. I'm only kidding. Welcome, everyone. And like Michael said, my name's Kevin Vogel. I've been doing what was called BPOS at the beginning, the Business Productivity Online Suite that really started Microsoft's journey into the cloud now for almost, a little over 12 years. And it has really developed into the platform for collaboration, for communication. I think Satya just announced last month that there's over 200 million people every day using Teams. And if you think about that, if you combine Zoom with WebEx, with GoToMyMeeting, with BlueJeans, with every other platform and added it together, Teams still has more people using it on a daily basis than all of them put together. So this has really become that platform that corporations rely on for communication. And Satya said, that he's seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. And I will tell you, when this whole thing started last March, I had been working with clients for years developing a cloud strategy. And that cloud strategy was usually a 2 to 3 year journey that these people were on. And they knew where they were trying to get to. It just was going to take them a while to get there. Well, all of a sudden, that little bug that Michael talked about that came along accelerated that. So a 3 year journey became a 6 month journey. And almost in every case, that's where people are going. And whether it be, just having meetings or collaborating, or now servicing customers and using the platform to actually meet customer needs is a big part of what they're using it for. Taylor, if you go to the next slide. So if you take a look here, Teams is really that hub that everyone uses now, at least the ones that I talk to really communicate instantly with people anywhere on the planet. If you look at this, I know that I'm based in South Florida. I work with people most of the time in San Antonio, which is where, Sirius is. I was just got off the phone with a company in San Diego, and it really doesn't matter where you are. You can be with a customer by using chats or meetings or calls almost at any time of the day or night and still get the message across, still be helpful with them, and save the airfare. I will tell you that talking to corporations, they're looking at a lot of them as really that June timeframe to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. And I don't think anybody really knows what that new normal is going to be. I don't think it's back to where we were, because like Michael said, people are actually finding out that their employees are more productive working from home than working from the office. So they don't want to give that up, but yet they still want them in the office. So I do think that the word hybrid has been used a lot, where people are going to be in the office 2 or 3 days a week and working from home 2 or 3 days a week. I don't see that changing. I do think that this work from home is going to be the norm now, not the exception to the rule. And if you talk about collaborating on documents, on information, Teams is the platform. Both Michael Dempsey and Michael Siebert and myself have been working on this presentation together at the same time inside a Teams session, working on a PowerPoint presentation. Michael could be in slide 33 working on one section. I'm working on slide 14 and so on. And it works seamlessly in the background and all held up in the cloud. And if you look around at all the third-party applications that are now available, there's over 750 third-party applications. There's 45 Microsoft applications, but I'm talking about applications from companies like Adobe, right? And you name it. I mean, there's Oracle's out there. There's tons of them that now integrate seamlessly with the Teams environment. And then the thing that a lot of corporations are worried about is security. And this is where Teams just kills everyone else when it comes to what you can do, everything from now litigation hold to sensitivity tags to the things that you can do from a compliance and governance standpoint inside Teams. It's the next generation. I know there's 3 clicks on this slide. Taylor, if you want to just click through them, sorry about that. But obviously, the bottom line is more productivity out of your people, making sure they're connected from anywhere on any device. And that's the beauty of Teams. Whether you're in a session like we are today where we're using the installed Teams client, whether you're using a browser, and I don't care if it's Edge or IE or Safari or Firefox or Chrome, you name the browser, Teams is supported in there. And then, of course, there's the mobile devices, the iOS, the Android phones out there. And anyone that's experienced Teams running on a mobile device, it's amazing. It really is an amazing thing. And then the security that we talked about. So we go on to the next slide. And you could see that these are areas that we can actually now start building this confidence inside of Teams. I had this slide build, but we're going to keep going through this because I talked basically through this, Taylor. So get me to the next one. There we go. So really, if you think about it, how much time are we now taking advantage of because of the pandemic? And I hate to say that, but this is really what's happened. The pandemic have kept us in a location where the average increased workday duration is over an hour. And if you look at the places where people commute, Michael brought it up about people that commute from the suburbs. If you're in a big city, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, it doesn't matter. You know, you spend minimum half an hour getting there and a half an hour coming back of time that's really wasted of the day. Now you can use that to actually increase your productivity. Each day, just by tracking down information, just trying to find where that document is, people spend about 20% of their day just looking to figure out where things are. Teams has really now streamlined that by using teams of people working on specific projects or departments where they can now go and look for the information they need. And of course, those first line workers, those people that aren't sitting behind a desk, now with the ability to use these mobile devices or browser-based type of interface, can now really be part of that whole infrastructure and get the communication they need without having to have that dedicated workstation that a lot of people need. If we go on to the next slide, you'll see that, you know, if you enable Teams, and this is, you know, this study comes right from an independent, you know, new technologies group. Companies are finding that over 3 years, they can actually get a $21.7 million savings by allowing customers to save time every day. What we just talked about, that 20%, that extra hour by not commuting. Better outcomes, business outcomes, because they can find the most relevant information quickly and concisely. They can lower their training costs because it makes it just so much simpler to use one platform instead of multiple platforms to do the same job. And that's really where, you know, Teams has it over and above everyone with all this integration I was talking about. And then because you're in that single platform all day and you really get good at it, let's be honest, anything you do over and over and over again, you get pretty good at it. That's going to reduce the number of support tickets that are coming to the help desk. And then because of that one platform, we can lower application development costs and develop either these low code or no code type of applications and really have not just those people that have been born and bred to develop applications, but now you have this community of people that actually want to do more with their jobs and start to create applications that are specific for them. And that's where this low code, no code type of application development comes across. We go on to the next slide. And like I said, there are pre-built applications ready to use inside Teams. We're going to show you just a couple of them. But then there's that low code applications, bots and workflows and things to really optimize the environment. We've developed bots that are answer bots where you can go in and ask questions, and believe it or not, there's a team of people that actually answer them. But the next time that question's answered, it's answered by the bot. And it starts to build this repository of answers over a very, very short period of time that now becomes that place to go to get the answers. And then workflows. I mean, I can't tell you how many things we have streamlined for businesses by just building workflows into Teams that once you make a request or you answer a poll, or you join a meeting and things can be automated in the background. And then of course, those professional developers that I talked about, working in one platform makes their job so much easier to develop the applications that more people can use quickly. And really, if you talk to anybody in business, the key to applications is getting them deployed and getting them used quickly. And that's where Teams actually comes into effect. If we go to the next one, Taylor. So if you look at this infrastructure and we click through this, you can see I told you there's 45 apps right now today that Microsoft has that are built for, stop right there, that are built specifically to work and integrate with Teams. You can see on there things like PowerPoint and Flow and Business Power BI, obviously Word, Excel, and OneDrive and all those things. But then if you start looking at the third-party applications like we talked about, you can see YouTube and Salesforce and Adobe that we talked about. All of these are pre-done, basically point and click and integrate in Teams. And really, the whole key to this is to reduce the amount of email and have people start working together seamlessly with the applications. Like I told you, there's unlimited possibilities in doing this low code and no code type of environment that we talked about, the bots and the workflows and things through Power BI and Power Apps that are now included. It really is the future of how applications are going to be deployed inside corporate America, because Teams will become that portal that you go to every day to do your work. It's just the way of the future. Mm-hmm. So if we go on, Taylor, and these are just a quick ending slide here. You can see these are where we're going to, the chats that we're already using, meetings that we do almost on an hourly basis. I was going to say daily basis, but if you look at my calendar, shoot, I'm on one almost every hour. Calls that Michael Dempsey is going to be going through, which has become more and more important as time goes on, to have that one single interface to communicate, collaborate, and work with people. It's the calls that are that key function that we're going to talk about. Sharing files securely, can't beat the Teams environment. And then we talked about apps and workflow. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. If you go to the next slide, I believe that Michael is the next. There we are. And you'll hear from Michael Dempsey, who really has educated me on the calling side of Teams, and I think he'll be a great resource for you. Michael?
Hey, thanks, Kevin. This is real quick, Michael Dempsey, before you get started. This is Michael Siebert again. I did want to comment. You had stated earlier in the presentation, I think it was 200 million active users, and it occurred to me as we were putting this presentation together, because the first time I made a run at one of our earliest remote work webinars, I think it was maybe summer of last year. I was quoting numbers, I think around March of last year, it had already grown to 44 million daily active users. And then April, it was 75 million. October was at 115. And now that here we're at April and it's up to 200 million. So I don't know if you had shared, I do know that Teams is the fastest growing product in Microsoft's history. And when you think of the number of products that Microsoft has brought out, to have Teams be the one that, of all those products, it is the fastest growing one in its entire history. I think that says quite a bit in terms of kind of the adoption of it.
The right app at the right time, Michael. And that's
exactly
what it came down to.
And Kevin mentioned the possibilities are endless, and Michael Dempsey is going to take us through, kind of how we extend this with voice and video and really drive that employee engagement. Because again, think about those 5 generations, and everybody operates differently in terms of how they communicate and collaborate. For those who may not be aware, there was announced yesterday Microsoft's acquisition of Nuance, right, which is a speech recognition primarily directed now at their healthcare market. Microsoft has got a significant footprint in healthcare, right? Virtual rounding for teams, or virtual rounding for the doctors using Microsoft Teams, and now helping to improve, the point of care experience for patients and the clinicians using some of this voice recognition, which is going to have sitting behind it very often Microsoft Teams. So I just wanted to point that out, because to Kevin's point there about those possibilities being endless, they really are, and Microsoft continues to invest here in this space. And that acquisition yesterday, Nuance, I thought was especially telling. So, Michael, I don't want to take any more of your thunder, so go ahead and let's dive into the voice and video.
I was waiting for the trumpet fanfare or something to announce my presence, but you can start on the next slide, actually. There.
Hey, just think, Michael, you had 2 opening acts. You're like the really the headliner here. So.
Truly the headliner. That's the way I like to think of it as well. So, I am as advertised here to talk about the the voice and video part of Teams. As a collaboration suite. There's collaboration that happens offline, there's collaboration that happens in near real time, and then there's things that just need to happen in real time, right? There are times where it's just easier to pick up the phone and call somebody, or it's just better to pick up the phone and call somebody, or even better than a call, to be able to look them in the eye while you talk to them, and have an interactive meeting, shared content there that you can work on in the same environment. So those are the things that I wanted to talk about. We look at productivity as a whole, or working from a home, or how that's changed, right? We know that there's work that we do that is independent, right? Something I need to focus on because of some content or some work I need to perform in a knowledge worker role, right? There is work that happens collaboratively with other people, and there is work that happens, in between those things, right? There's the, run into somebody at the water cooler type of conversation, and real work does happen in those engagements as well. We see all sorts of studies out there that are showing that, that private independent work that I would do on my own, being remote in a lot of industries, it's improving, right? Productivity is going up because they don't have the distractions of coworkers and the latest, I don't know, football pool for the weekend, or whatever the case may be. Collaboration, we've got some options with things like meetings like we're on, and it's some of that in between stuff that's been a little harder to capture while we're at home. So that's somewhere where we're gonna fill those niches here, right? Next slide, please. Starting with the top, right? Starting with that full collaborative video meeting experience. That's an experience you're having today, right? It's an experience that I think many of you are probably already familiar with, at least at a personal level, right? You click a link, you add your smiling face to the webcam, and instant meeting that we can have. We can share, we can make decisions. I think here they're picking new curtains for a break room, perhaps. I don't know that those are the meetings I get invited to. Mine are far less exciting. Usually spreadsheets are involved, but same concept, right? Next slide. The part you may not realize is that that's just one form of collaborative meeting we can have with the Teams platform. Microsoft has partnered up, you could say they teamed up, all pun intended, with a number of different manufacturers out there, folks like Poly and Crestron and Logitech, Lenovo, Yealink, to make a number of certified video endpoints that will fit a whole host of situations, from the individual, I need a USB cam for my home desk, to a huddle room that seats 3 or 4 people, to an executive boardroom, to a full auditorium with multiple cameras and multiple screens and displays and microphone arrays and the whole bit, right? While so many of us are working from home, it's a little harder to think about being back in a boardroom or a training room with 20 other people in the same room, but it is actually a trend we are seeing to start. We're starting to see it increase pretty dramatically as people start to return to the office more. As more vaccine gets out there, it becomes more of a consideration. The going thought is that when we get back to the office, we're never getting everybody back to the office. And so pretty much all future meetings, somebody's going to be remote, right? Even if the whole world were fully vaccinated and COVID was behind us, and you go to a business meeting and maybe there's 15 people in the room with you when we're back in the, our new normal, but there's almost always going to be somebody that's joining remote. Maybe it's a handful of somebodies that are joining remote. So it's kind of that, again, that hybrid work collaboration experience we've talked about. We'll wear out the word hybrid in that regard, but we're seeing a lot of companies starting to look at their conference spaces, their shared spaces now. Look at your office space, you look at the amount of space you have dedicated to cubicles and the amount of space you have dedicated to shared workspaces. We're starting to see a big shift there. We're starting to see more people focusing on those conference rooms and looking at how they can equip that for the future of work, where we have more people joining remotely than we ever have before. So that link there, office.com/Teams devices, great spot to get some ideas on, like, say, anything from 2 people in a room to 200 people in a room, and anything in between. So next slide. I gotta go download that old, projector grade school doing sound. So I'll date myself there. The other part of the collaborative meeting experience, right? And this is for the more engineering minded on the call, but not everybody runs Microsoft Teams. Right, we've mentioned some of those other names. Some of these other names like Cisco, Poly, BlueJeans. Those are large companies as well, right? There's lots of different equipment out there. There are some standards out there. Not all standards are the same, unfortunately. And so interoperability between systems is a very important consideration in any design for meeting spaces. There's the Microsoft Cloud Video Interop Service, CVI for short. And this is an effort that Microsoft co-develops with each of these manufacturers so that we can create a service to join those other conference calls, so that we can have a Cisco endpoint join a Microsoft Teams meeting, or we could have a Microsoft Teams room endpoint join a BlueJeans meeting, or whatever the scenario might be for that day. So next. The other part of collaboration is that the water cooler chat, right? The more interactive, the more real time, just a good old fashioned phone call, right? How that can help fill some of those gaps when folks are remote or in a hybrid environment. Microsoft Teams has, since its inception, supported some level of internal voice over IP calling between Teams clients. Extending that into being a corporate, even enterprise level phone system is really not that much of a stretch. The basic technology is already there. There's essentially 3 things that we need to do that. The first, of course, is a license. That's the easiest to describe. But the other 2 aspects, next slide. First is going to be some device to talk on, right? An endpoint. And again, a lot of those same manufacturers and even a few more come into play when it comes to choosing hardware-based IP phones. If you want to have hardware-based IP phones that are available, there's all different shapes and sizes and fit all different budget ranges for the types of devices that are out there. Ones for traditional 10-key pads on them, as well as Teams desktop devices that don't even have a traditional 10-key pad on them. Everything is a touch screen and anything in between. And next, there's also the option of no phone, right? And that is using your computer or your smartphone or whatever your device is for the day as your telephone, the soft phone experience. And next. I know that soft phones in particular, in some cases, even the concept of an IP phone can cause some nerves and trepidation amongst people. How do I make sure that that's a quality experience? How do I ensure that that's the same type of experience I've grown very accustomed to on a telephone? If you think about a traditional phone system when was the last time you picked it up and dial tone wasn't there, right? I mean, we've gotten pretty spoiled with how good and how solid that technology was. So there are a number of things that we can do. We, being folks like Sirius, can help you out with this. First and foremost, make sure that your people understand the technology, training the people, when you're moving to an IP-enabled phone system. Help them understand that if you are trying to farm Bitcoin or map the DNA genome of the red tree squirrel at the same time you're on a call, it's going to impact your call quality, right? That the network at the Starbucks is not the same quality as the network at your corporate office, or even your home Wi-Fi, more than likely is better off than some of those. So helping them understand what those situations are, how to work around that helps a lot. Next. It also makes a...
Michael, one question. I know that a lot of people don't understand this, but you don't even need a calling plan in some cases to call outside your corporation. Am I right? You can actually use Teams to call another corporation that's using Teams and have a call that's basically over the internet. And I'll tell you, I used it, actually talked to someone in France. It was clear as a bell. I never had to dial a number.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, a lot of people don't understand that they can actually call outside, call their customers, call their suppliers right through Teams without even having a calling plan, correct?
Yeah, and I breezed through that a little bit, right? I perhaps assumed too much knowledge there in stating that, you know, it's something that you could do internal calling with for a long time. Teams client to Teams client. I probably was landed too strong on the word internal, right? Because it doesn't necessarily mean within your four walls, but from Teams client to Teams client, if there's an IP path, if there's a network path for the two to communicate with, then yes, that's possible. I'm talking here more about how we get it connected to, you know, the other phones, whether that's other corporations using other phone systems or Domino's Pizza on the old traditional, you know, telco network or whatever it might be. But you know, another factor that greatly influences your success there is the peripherals that you're using, right? The quality of those peripherals does matter. That's you know, the advantage of using phones that are certified by the manufacturer. Microsoft doesn't manufacture that hardware themselves, right? But they do have a certification process and a validation process to ensure that those are good, solid, capable devices. Particularly things like headsets, we tend to overlook when using soft phones as, you know, I'll just use whatever I have, but you know, a higher quality headset can certainly make a difference in the quality of your call. And lastly, sorry, next slide, is you know, around the network itself, right? I mean, there are factors that are outside of your control, and this is where Sirius proper, the original Sirius, right? We were all about networks, data centers, you know, servers and compute. This is our heritage, has been for decades. You know, when it comes to assessing the readiness of a network to support real-time technology like voice over IP or video, essentially the exact same protocols there, by the way, literally just the amount of bandwidth that we need to account for between those two. You know, nobody does it better in terms of helping you make sure it's ready for these technologies. And if something is not working right, you know, being able to troubleshoot that, assess that, pinpoint where those issues are and remediate them, that's also something that we can help with a lot. Next. The last element of evolving your Teams calling to being a Microsoft phone system, and that literally is the name that they put on it, is the Microsoft phone system. Being able to call the external world is having a public switch telephone network provider, a PSTN provider. There were originally two different ways of doing that. At Ignite here about a month ago, they announced a third. So you saw the gratuitous animation slide in there and bounce around for a second there as another option that we have. But these options fall into kind of three categories, each with their own benefits. The first being just the Microsoft calling plan that we mentioned already. And Microsoft calling plan is where Microsoft is your carrier. It would be really, really hard to get any easier than the Microsoft calling plan, right? It's a paid for add-on, right? But they become your carrier. You don't have to think about it anymore. Presto, it's connected to the public telephone network. You can make phone calls, right? A little bit of configuration on the back end, but as far as managing or maintaining those connections, it's something you don't have to worry about at all. And the other two I'll talk about on the next two slides. So next. The Operator Connect model, this is the one that was just announced. This is not available today, but it is in a couple of weeks here. Is a model very much like the Microsoft calling plan, in that these are a collection of providers that are cloud connected. They are connected directly to Microsoft in an Azure data center somewhere, so they have direct connections on the back end. But instead of you paying Microsoft directly for your calling plan from Microsoft, you are contracting with one of these other approved providers. The principal difference here is that there's competition here, right? And because there's more than one choice, these manufacturers, these providers will start to differentiate themselves through price, through additional analytics or reporting, maybe some security features, maybe different cost models, whether it's a flat rate or it's a flat rate up to a certain amount and then only billing for bursts beyond that. There will be lots of options amongst these folks about how you do it, as well as, there's some familiar names on here, certainly folks like Verizon and T-Mobile, right? Tata, if you're have any overseas locations, all these are names you're familiar with. You may already have some telco contracts with these folks, and it will be easier to move those contracts to this environment if that's the case. And then the other option would be what they would refer to as a direct routing configuration. Direct routing is going to take the most administrative work, right? But it provides you 100% control over what you're doing, who you're connecting to, how you're doing it. So, always a trade-off in technology, right? But when you have a direct route model, you are literally providing your own telco service. You're providing your own session border controller, the SBC, the gateway that talks IP out one side and it talks to your carrier out the other. That SBC could be something that serves your Microsoft phone system by itself, or one of the other very common scenarios we see is that SBC is actually part of another phone system. It's very rare that customers come to me and say, I have a 2,000 person company and we have no phone system today. We'd like to install one. Right? There's always something there. There's always at least a migration path from where you're at today to where you want to go. And we see a lot of cases where folks are looking at Microsoft Teams. You've got Microsoft Teams on the desktop. You're using Teams for messaging and file sharing, and you're doing some calling on it today, and you're starting to think, I have a phone system. I'm very happy with my phone system because my phone system also runs my call center or my banking IVR or whatever your industry might be. But why can't I use Microsoft Teams as my soft phone client in that larger phone system? And the answer is you can, through direct routing model, through that sort of integration that we could help you build. Caveats apply, right, to get it accomplished. But this is the sort of thing where Sirius adds value to the equation that can help you make that type of integration. So
hey,
that
Mike,
is. Yeah.
We did get a question from someone in the audience, and you actually just mentioned it. It says, does Sirius or MessageOps have any call center, contact center running Teams? And if you do you have any story you could tell about it? Elaborate a little bit about how they're using it.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the old engineering yes and no. How's that for answer?
It depends.
Right? It depends. So the distinction I am drawing there is that Microsoft Teams does not have a traditional call center. If you went to somebody whose job title was, call center supervisor, call center manager, and asked them if the features that Microsoft has define a traditional call center to them, they would probably tell you no, right? There are some queuing and hunt groups and things that we can do in the Microsoft platform, right? But it doesn't really have a dedicated call center package where you're going to have 500 agents and supervisors listening and grading their, did they offer the special deal at the end of the call type of interaction. Microsoft has to date left that to third-party integrators. There's a certification program they've started for that as well. And so there are certainly customers out there that we know are using a Microsoft phone system and have one of the approved Microsoft call center providers out there. We've also seen that be, some of the traditional folks again too, your Avaya, your Cisco, your in contact. Some of those folks can integrate very nicely with Microsoft Teams phone system as well. The phone system part of Microsoft Teams phone system is standards based, right? So we have that ability to connect all those other call center technologies. But, and I don't have a crystal ball, but we also see things like the acquisition of Nuance, which is absolutely business focused on call center. Microsoft buying them speaks strongly to me of making me think they must have something in the works if they're starting to buy up supporting applications to call centers out there. So does that explain my it depends?
No, you got it. You actually did it very well. One of the questions though that they had was around call quality. And do you have any tools that you use for troubleshooting call quality inside of a Teams environment?
Yeah, so within the Teams environment, that was another one of the announcements that came out of Ignite, actually, were their real-time telemetry statistics. I'm not sure of the exact release date on that, but that is that was one of their major announcements at Ignite, and we should see that here literally any day show up, where it's a an online portal. It would be part of your Teams administration hub that you'll be able to go into and look at some basic MOS scores and some of the call quality tracing and things of that nature. Because it's brand new, I don't know to the nth level of detail exactly everything that will be in there or not yet. I know when Sirius goes to troubleshoot voice problems, we've got some very specific tools that we've bought, and some very specific tools that we've created, to trace those things end to end, which can be a pretty good exercise in how IP works.
Absolutely, it's a challenge. Voice, you couldn't get more challenging, right? Because you can't drop anything.
Well, video.
Well, okay, all right.
Yeah, video is a little more challenging.
Yeah.
Well, let me just let people know, for those of you that don't know, there's a website out there that's Office 365 roadmap.com. If you go on there, you can actually see what's in queue. In other words, what's been just released, what's in progress, what's on the roadmap. And I'll tell you, I'm there a lot looking at what's coming out for Teams and different applications. And you can actually filter for just calling or just Teams. It's a great site. If you've never been on there, you can get there through your help button, believe it or not, in Teams.
Yep.
So I think we're going to give it back to Michael Siebert now, right?
Yep.
Michael, you all set?
I'm done.
Great. Thank. I mean,
it's all you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin and Michael. Yeah, wealth of information there. So, go ahead and take to the last slide here, Taylor, and you can just go ahead through the build and get to the Microsoft Teams Telephony Readiness Assessment. So, we've got, I guess Sirius and MessageOps, where we've got a number of offerings in the Microsoft Modern Workspace. And in fact, one of the questions that came in was asking about, could we touch on the advantage of working from home again? Now you'll see the offering that's sitting on top here, the Microsoft Teams Telephony Readiness Assessment. Hopefully, as you've seen from what Michael was able to explain from the voice and video side of things, and sometimes I look at that, it's like, acronym bingo. I mean, there's just a lot that I don't know what I don't know when it comes to voice and video. And between what Sirius is able to do with our what I call our legacy voice and video practice, that Michael is helping lead, and on the MessageOps side from a Teams perspective that Kevin went over, when you bring all that together, right? Well, how do I understand where I am? Am I ready to take on? Am I ready to migrate to or integrate with Microsoft Teams phone system? And that's also a key point I wanted to make. Michael pointed that out on one of the slides, right? This is not an all or nothing scenario, right? It's depending on where you are with your voice and video today, as it's being used to support employee engagement, in particular for remote. It might mean a migration, it might mean an integration, it might mean nothing, right? But this assessment kind of helps our experts getting engaged with you to see where you are, where you want to get to, and what it would take to get there. Now, more to the point of the question I said about the advantages of working from home, there is you can see the offering kind of right behind the one that's sitting on top, and that's our work from home readiness assessment, right? So we look to see, where are you on that remote work maturity curve, right? Where are you on that curve in terms of your ability to support the collaboration of your employees that they require to be productive within your organization? right? To the specific question about, is it really productive, right? Well, there's a number of studies out there. There's one from a company called Airtasker. It was done earlier in 2020. I think they interviewed over 1,000 people, and there are some stats that sit within that study that I think are pretty telling. But I can give you just a couple highlights, right? I mean, if you think about some of the obvious ones where there's the lack of commute time, right? Because literally my commute is down the stairs and to the left. Now, I've been doing that for 25 years, right? Since I've been here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been fortunate enough to work for an organization. The teams that I have led have been across the country, right? We were never in an office co-located together. So yes, it does take a little bit of a different management and leadership style when your team is primarily remote, but it does work and it is effective, right? We're cutting out that commute time. We're cutting out the distraction time, right? The water cooler time. Michael mentioned it, that while there is some productive work that can come out of those engagements, right? Where I'm talking to somebody at the water cooler about a work topic, there are others that are around the water cooler who are distracted by it, or I'm distracted by noises in the kitchen, or I'm distracted by, noises in the hallway. And very often in today's office environments, right, the cube walls have lowered. It's a very wide open kind of setup. And as a result of that, distractions increase. So while originally we may have been striving for more collaboration by opening things up, ultimately it may have resulted in more distractions and driving that collaboration down. So, again, things like the reduced commute time, reduced distractions, flexibility, right? I'm actually working more when I'm working from home than I was when I was in the office. But the way that I'm managing that work-life balance allows me to have a quality of life that's actually increased, even though I'm actually applying more time to my work, right? Now, again, many of us at Sirius have been operating that way for years, right? I would, if I needed to get to a doctor, if I needed to go to a kid's soccer game or track meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not a problem. Sign off at 3, be back on at 4:30 and work for a couple more hours. So it's a different way of working, right? And even though intrinsically we might think, well, that's just going to be a distraction and less work, it actually has increased that productivity, and welcome the opportunity for more follow-on discussion on that, because it is pretty insightful. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Well, there's a ton of questions, yep. And they're all directed right at Michael Dempsey. Thank God they're not from me. No, I'm only kidding, Michael.
I am answering as fast as I can go here. So if you've got one in there, give me
I see that.
Give him time.
Now, one thing that I do want to mention is all those assessments that you had up on the screen there, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes, and I'm not going to say every time, but sometimes you can qualify for Microsoft funding. And that's Absolutely. One thing we do here at Sirius and MessageOps is we try to take advantage of all the funding that Microsoft has available. So if you're interested in doing one of those assessments, please let us know. We'll check with Microsoft. You might qualify where, shoot, they'll pay for the whole thing, which will get into some root cause analysis, take a look at your network, see if you're ready for the calling, and do a lot of the background work that Michael was talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kevin. Microsoft, I've worked with a number of vendors through the years, and Microsoft is, I think, the best at kind of putting their money, where their mouth is, in terms of, because be honest, right? They're trying to drive the consumption of those workloads, but that only works if they're effective. And we've seen how effective they can be, and so they're looking to invest, with their customers to make that happen.
And I know we're coming up here to the top of the hour. We do want to thank everyone who stayed on here with us for the hour. I hope it was worth your time. I know Michael Dempsey is typing furiously to try to answer these questions. We will be publishing all the questions and answers in our replied email. And we will be following up with you, or you can follow up with us. You can call either Michael or myself, or hit us with a Teams chat or anything. And we'll be, and I say Michael's because it's easier than saying Michael Siebert or Michael Dempsey. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, help you through this challenge of now integrating all of your communication into one vehicle. Michael Siebert, you want to?
I think we're good. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today and attention to this. It's a great topic, and always excited talking about it. So, with that, I think we'll close it out. Thank you, everybody, and stay healthy and stay safe.
And Taylor, thanks for your help today.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.